Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name is
Hour.
Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another week of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. I'm Mel Albin. I'm your host and creator of the show. And let me tell you a little bit about Jazz Confusion Power Hour if you're new to our show. Our show is about bringing you some of the finest artists playing in jazz and jazz crossover, whether it's jazz gospel, jazz R&B, jazz blues, jazz country, jazz rock, anything where jazz intersects with any other genre. We'll have special artists on the show, most of whom are really charting and doing really fabulously well and legends already in their own time. The station, the Source Radio Network on which the show appears, is a non-commercial. It's also a non-profit radio station, so we appreciate any donations that any of our fans want to make. You can go onto Source and find the link to make donations to cover our costs. We have licensing fees. I have staff, studio time, and equipment. So, the station is devoted to jazz 24/7, and also to building generational wealth for minorities through small businesses that we also feature on our show, on our station. So those of you who are new to Source or those new to the Jazz Confusion Power Hour, any donations you make are greatly appreciated. Now, about the show, the Jazz Confusion Power Hour, we're looking to get behind the mind of the artist. So it enhances your understanding and your appreciation for the music that you already love in most cases. So let me tell you about some of the artists that we've had on the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. We've had Eric Roberson, Annie Lennox, Billy Ocean, Raheem Devon, Mesa, Keiko Matsui. We've had Felix Cavalieri, Blake Aaron, Terry Wollman, Dion Parson, Dwelle, Mavis Swan Poole, Reagan Whiteside, Costella, Celine Johnson, B. Valentine, Brian Culbertson, and many more. We had over 100 guests on the show so far. And tonight is no exception. We have an incredible artist for you that is kind of unusual in a lot of respects. This week's artist is a bass player, and she crosses over between jazz, blues, R&B, and soul. In my opinion, she's redefining R&B into a subgenre that I'm calling smooth R&B. It's not smooth jazz, and I'll explain a little bit more during the show of why this is a little different. And it's not, by the same token, pure R&B. She's a gifted songwriter, a multi-instrumentalist. She has a new LP dropping the end of May. Her recordings have featured a variety of gifted musicians, including her song Hot Summer Breeze, featuring Najee. Please welcome to the Jazz Confusion Power Hour, a special guest this week. And I think you're going to have a great time tonight, Karla Leal.
Hey,
Hi, Karla.
how you
How
guys
are
doing?
you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I already introduced your music as being what I'm calling a new subgenre called smooth R&B. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I did chat with you prior to the show about it. And I asked you if you have any qualms about my definition of your music. Feel free to express yourself anytime during the show. But I really find your music extremely unique, and being a bass player, especially, it brings a different dimension. Because what do you find in smooth jazz most of the time? Are you're going to find guitar and sax, or trumpet, or a horn. You don't find a lot of bass players leading a band, or actually being the front instrument,
Yeah.
in the music. So I'm so glad to have you on tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. One of the things I like to ask people, whenever I have a special guest on the show, um, you know, tell everybody about what's cooking, what's going on with you in 2024,
Yeah.
what music you have dropping or recent releases. So go ahead, let people
Yeah, there's a
know.
lot cooking. I'm excited about this. It's a long time coming. So I have a new album coming out, 10 brand new songs with another radio release in July 28th. And so I'm just excited because this album has meant a lot to me, a lot of sweat and tears. It's been a lot of work, and I'm just excited to hear the feedback from everybody from it. So yeah,
I know you put out a lot of singles. Is this your first LP?
yes, it is my first, and that was kind of
Wonderful.
strategic because the industry is a bit different, and I'm a new artist, so I try to ease myself into the industry by releasing the singles, and there has been a lot of great responses to it. So now it's time to just here you go. I've got like 3 albums in my computer, and here this is the first one. Here here it is.
That's great. Again, we're going to talk more in detail about the kind of rhythms and music that you've been putting out recently.
Yeah.
I think that people need to really appreciate the artistry that's going into the music you're doing. So, I know you're a multi-instrumentalist. What instruments do you play?
I didn't hear the last part. What was the last part?
I know you're a multi-instrumentalist. What
Mhm.
instruments do you play besides bass?
Sorry about that. Piano and bass guitar. And I didn't pick up the piano until COVID happened. And I discovered, hey, I can play keyboard too. And so then I taught myself, went through that process and just started producing, and just found out that I had a lot of gifts inside me and a lot of things that, new sounds that I wanted to produce. So yeah.
Do you know there are a lot of bass players that are also piano players and keyboard players? There's a lot
Yes,
of them. It seems to be a natural progression.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk, a little bit about your background so people can understand where your music actually comes from. I know it comes from your heart, but let's talk about your family and your childhood. Were you surrounded by music? Was it in your family?
I was not. Now, my grandfather, when I grew up, and I didn't know that my grandfather was a bass player, and I didn't know that until I was in college. And so, growing up, I was not focused on music. I didn't take a single band class in high school or anything. I was focused on the books, and I actually was going to college for engineering, and that's what I'm an electrical engineer. And so, when I was in college, my pastor back at home was like, you have a gift to play the bass guitar, and he was like, you need to go get one. And so I was like, okay. So I went and grabbed one, and the rest is history. I started playing in the church, and I literally had taught myself how to play, and it was all relatable because music is a lot of math, and I'm like really good at math, and so everything just kind of connected.
Oh, terrific. Do
Yeah,
you play the upright bass too, or just, the bass guitar?
just the bass guitar. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just curious.
yeah.
'Cause sometimes people, switch over and play both. I know you were born in Flint, Michigan. I'm just curious, did Flint have any influence at all on your music development, or did it all happen after?
It all happened after, literally after I graduated high school and was in college. That's when I started entering the scene and kind of just being introduced to like Eddie Brown. He was fantastic keyboard. Was from Flint, Michigan. And so there's just a lot of people who came from Flint, Michigan that was very musical. And then you have Motown, of course, which is right next door in Detroit. So
That's why I was asking you, because I don't know if you know Demetrius Brown, but D Brown is a great guitar player, and I've had artists on where the fact that they were located in a city like Detroit or Flint or Chicago, like in Detroit, for example, where D came from, he knew a kid whose father was a top executive at Chrysler because the auto industry is there. So this kid's father financed Dee's first recording.
oh wow.
So and then he kept telling me. Then he also met the son of Okay, I'm just drawing a blank. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because she lived there, so he met her son, and then he got to play with Aretha. He was one.
Wow.
He did some recordings with her. So being in Detroit was instrumental in his development. And now you're telling me that a lot of the artists you work with came from Flint.
Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes I would drive to Detroit just to go see like Mesa. She would come down there and play at the old GM restaurant that was down there, and she would come and play there. And I would be like, I'm in the first row. I'm right there to go watch her. I love, Norman Brown. I grew up listening to him, and it just had an effect on me, And so that's why I gravitate to smooth jazz so much.
Which song of Norman's did you like the best?
Rain.
Rain? Okay. Yeah. Mesa's been on my show, and Mesa's a friend of mine. She's wonderful. I just went to see her on Valentine's Day. She gave a concert in Bethesda Theater. I went to see Mesa. So it's interesting when I hear people who I have on my show, talk about the artists that they went to listen to when they were kids or growing up. So that's wonderful. So tell me, so after public school, you went for electrical engineering to college. Where did you go to college?
Kettering University. It used to be called GM Institute. And so, I went there. That's in Flint, Michigan. And then went to grad school and then moved on to California. And then I ended up moving here to Dallas.
Let's talk about the transition to California. Were you playing music then, or were you still pursuing electrical engineering as a career?
So the only reason why I moved to California is because I work for a company called Raytheon, and they moved me out there, and so I was doing both. And then one day they wanted me to move to Texas, and I was like, "Oh man, I was just getting started."
Now, tell me, in California, were you sitting in with bands? Did you have your own band?
So I was just getting into the scene. So I was playing a lot of churches. I would go to like these Saturday night live sessions, and I would see Hadrian Farrar just ripping on the bass. And then like Eddie Brown would be there just killing the keys. And I was just like, oh, this is a dream. And I would see all these great artists. And so it really was like very encouraging and just like, oh my gosh, I can do this.
And were you playing out when you were out there?
I was just in a church scene. So I was living there for about 6 months before I had to make the transition. So I was just getting started, and then I had to move.
Okay. So when you got to Texas, what did you do with your music? You were still working for Raytheon.
I was still working for Raytheon, but I was introduced to a lot of different bands. I mean, Dallas is a silent killer in the music scene, and there are a vast amount of great players here. And so I just started getting introduced to people. And so like right now I play in a band called Emerald City Bands. And so they play all over the country. I play at church. I produce my own music, and soon, hopefully, I'll be able to go on tour, with my music. And so, I just kind of came and started playing, and the rest was history.
Do you know Ashley Smith?
No, I don't know her.
She's in Dallas. She's an R&B vocalist. She's terrific.
Oh wow!
She's been on the show too. So there's some people I'll introduce you to.
Yes, absolutely.
She's wonderful vocalist. So let's talk a little bit about your music, because I want people to kind of think of it. And we're going to play some of your songs in a few minutes. But I started to mention earlier that I think this term smooth R&B really makes sense in your music. And your music seems innovative and different to me. Is that, to me, R&B's rhythmic foundation is provided by two specific instruments, the bass and the drums.
Yes.
It's pivotal to R&B.
Yeah.
It has a narrower parameter than smooth jazz. And it provides, the drums and the bass provide the pulse and the syncopation, and the structure different from jazz. It's much more formalized than jazz. Jazz is more improvisational, and R&B is more formal. But there's a strong funk or rhythm and drum timing and bass that you find in a lot of R&B. So what I found is you combined not bringing, in my mind, R&B to smooth jazz. You brought some smooth jazz to R&B. But fundamentally, you're an R&B improvisationalist. So, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think you're doing something unique. And, I hear a lot more smooth R&B than I hear smooth jazz when I listen to your music. So what do you think? Do you think I'm onto something, or am I wrong?
I think you are. Listen, rhythm is of the soul. That's my whole purpose is when I play my music, I want to see people bobbing their head. I want to see them in the rhythm and dance and then groove into the song, And so that's really like when I produce, like I literally play it in my car to make sure that, hey, I'm bumping in the car as I'm driving. I have the flow going. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that smooth jazz did change. It took the bebop out of the music. And in some ways you're putting that back in. And that's what I really loved about listening to your music. I found you going through looking at charts that you've been on, and I started listening. I go through charts all the time to look for different artists. Some people are super well known and some people are less known, but I look for that uniqueness in their music. And when I heard yours, it just caught my eye. And that's the reason why I contacted you and wanted you to be on the show. So I want to play some of your music for people so they'll see what I'm talking about here, about what's different about how you approach R&B and smooth jazz together. So I want to play the song Wait and See.
Awesome.
So why don't you set that up and tell people a little bit about the song, how it came about?
Yeah, so Wait and See is one of the very first songs that I produced. So I started producing during the COVID season. And so Wait and See is kind of like wait and see like the greatness or the rhythm. You just kind of waiting and just see what the greatness is about to be produced out of this song, the rhythm, the soul, And so that was how it came about. It's just I was kind of sitting, in my room and I was like, let's put some chords together and boom, 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 it all came together.
and the band members or the session players, how did you get them together?
So it's a lot of networking. So I've been doing a lot of networking since I came to Dallas, and I have been graciously graced to be in the presence of great artists like JT. He's a drummer that played for Snarky Puppy.
They were on my show too.
I mean, great people who are very nice, and there's a lot of nice people here. So it's been great being here in Dallas. Yeah.
Would you say that at this point you have a band? These could be members of a band?
I have a band, yep. And so now it's trying to get us ready for touring and such.
Terrific. Great. Well, look, let's play Wait and See, and then we can come back and talk some more, okay?
Great.
Let me pull this up. Here it is. that's wonderful, Karla.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. It has such a strong bass line. I love that. And who was the guitar player?
I have a lot of them. I'm trying to remember his name. Give me a sec. I have to remember his name.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay. I think it was. It's not someone you guys. His name is Jason. I forgot his last name, but he's here in Dallas. I'm not sure he's very known, but he's an excellent guitar player.
And the horn player?
So that his name is Austin. He actually just moved to New York. He was a guy who just graduated college, and so he had moved to New York, and he's doing well out there.
Oh, terrific! Okay,
yeah,
it's really a great track. And when did you produce that one? When was that one done?
That was done in 2020.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I think people are going to hear a little evolution in your music because again, when we play another of your songs, I think your bass lines have gotten stronger as time went on.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and that's part of the evolution of any musician. It's never over till it's over.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me change gears for a minute. Since there's kind of a classical side to playing jazz or playing R&B. When you look at the music scene today, which has evolved in so many directions, first of all, artist development, A&R, is a thing that's gone. It used to be the record labels did this, and they developed the brand, the artist. They put the artist on tour. They gave them studio time, and they kind of selected what they thought was really unique and creative music. And that function of being able to bring in diversified talent and to develop them, like the Jackson 5, and to take a chance on a group like that. They don't sound anything like some of the other Motown, like the Temptations. They sound different. They were looking for quality music that had commercial appeal. So I'm just curious, when you look at the changes in technology, the changes in how artist development takes place, the move to indie artists like you, usually before you weren't heard on the radio unless you had a label.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So this has all changed. So I'm curious, when you look around the music scene today, if you could change anything, what would you change?
I would just like to hear more authentic sound. Some of the things sound very similar. And so I was talking to my mix engineer one day, and he was just saying how, a lot of times these songs that might be hits can be grabbing from like older songs or things that have been used before. And so a lot of times I said, is there anything new nowadays? And so I think that's the thing that I would like to hear, is just something new, something different.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, there's nothing wrong in my mind with sampling. John Batiste, for example, he samples a lot of the old music, and so does Uptown Funk.
Yeah, that's a classic. Okay.
Yeah, but he samples a lot of the old music,
Sure.
and there's nothing, to me, there's nothing wrong with letting people know where does the music today come from.
Sure.
There is an etiology of music. There's a link between past and present, and now a lot of that has disappeared. And what you're talking about is that the technology is replacing musicians and songwriters, and it's becoming much more formulaic, and you don't get the diversity. You used to be able to, the word popular music. I just had this discussion with Philip Brandon was on my show last week. We had this discussion. Pop music used to be what's popular. Now it's a genre. And then there's subgenres. There's, Korean pop. I mean, there's all kinds of subgenres. And it was never a genre. And you could turn on a radio station and hear in the same station, you can hear Ray Charles, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Elvis Presley, Um, it, it wasn't so tied in to a specific sound. And I think, part of what you're talking about, what your sound engineer is talking about, is so much of the diversity of music has been filtered out. And, the reason for my show and the Source radio station is to keep this music alive because it's rich. Jazz is the only American form of music. It's pure. It's our only form. It's pure American. And so I appreciate what you're saying. I think you're right about the limitations of some of the music today. And I'm with you. I'd like to see it expanded also.
Sure.
Who are some of the artists today that you really like to listen to?
Oh, so I grew up on Norman Brown. That I still listen to him this day. Marcus Miller has been a very big influence on me. So has Victor Wooten, Hadrian Farad, even on the gospel side. That I have had some influence from that genre as well, as I grew up on that as well.
Okay, what about vocalists? Any vocalists that you really,
the only vocalist that I really listen to is like Mesa, a little bit of Beyonce, Shirley Caesar for gospel. So a different variety.
Do you listen to any of the older artists from the 50s and 60s? 70s?
Oh, yes. I play a lot of that music as well. So like a lot of Temptation stuff. I'll play a lot of that type of music. So we do a lot of cover songs. So it's constantly we're playing stuff like that. Yeah.
I cover. That's another thing too. Cover songs to me are really important because it keeps that music alive. Everyone likes the original music to be sure, but one of my friends, Macy Gray, Macy does mostly cover songs, and when she takes an old song and remakes it, it's better than the original. And but it keeps that music in front of people. So it's a continuity and again a diversity. So I think some of the artists you're talking about represent that.
Oh yeah.
So,
and I feel like people like Michael Jackson, his music will never go away. He is a icon, and so you always need like the foundation to still be there, And we grew up on Herbie Hancock, he
definitely
invented, he reinvented jazz and things like that. So they are the foundation.
Sure. Some of the musicians, like you mentioned, Herbie Hancock, just have redefined the genre.
Yes.
They made such a great contribution. Let's talk a little bit more about where do you want to do touring? I'm just curious. What is it that you want to do in terms of your own musical development?
Oh, I would love to tour all over the world. That is a dream. Another dream of mine is to play on the Dave Koz cruise. So if you're listening, it will be wonderful to be one of those artists that plays on that cruise. And so, yeah, that's where I see myself as touring. I would like to write for people as well. Because I feel like I have a lot of I've written lyrics to a lot of songs that I produce as well, and sometimes it may not be for me to sing; it might be for another artist as well. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about too. You're a bass player, and like we just heard one of your earlier songs, but no vocals. But you also do vocals too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you have any voice training, or is all of this self-taught?
It's all self-taught. I probably would be a lot further along had I been had some formal training, but the timeline happened for a reason, and yeah, I'm just really self-taught.
Yeah, it gives people a leg up, like if you go to Berklee School of Music, because the vast network of the former graduates, they're all out there to give you a helping hand. So as an independent artist, what's replaced record labels are schools like Berklee in terms of artist development. They stepped in. So, but a lot of independents are like you. They really, are doing it on their own, and in a way, it's beneficial because you don't have the structure of what they're trying to get you to do when you go to a place like Berkeley. You're more experimental, and you're more, it comes from your soul, from your heart, from your ear. So there's some distinct advantages to going the route that you've gone so far. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, and technology that is a pro of technology that has enabled us to be able to do that. The internet has been like transformed just the way that people produce and get their music out there now. So yeah, it's been going independent, is very, you can do it. You're not stuck to having to sign for a label if you don't want to.
Absolutely. But the downside is the labels used to control the money. And the artist, and the downside now is the indie artist controls the money, but they get 0.0008 cents per spin. So do you want to be controlled and make some money, or do you want to control and make no money? Either way, the artist is always getting burned. It's always been a problem. But let's play another one of your songs for people, for the audience and listeners. And we have about over 70,000 people tuning in already to the show. So there's quite a number of people interested in your music. Let's talk about Groove Tactics. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that song?
That was another song that I had produced. Well, I produced that song in 2022. And that song is really heavily driven on rhythm and just really the groove. A lot of the melody on that chorus was a little bit different for me. Originally, it was a song that I had produced for singing, and but then I converted it to a more instrumental song. So yeah, that's how that came about.
And that's your most recent song that you have out now?
Yes.
I found that on a lot of charts. That's right. That's part of how I found you. So we're going to play. Right now, we're going to play Groove. I'm sorry, I'm messing up here. Groove Tactics, and then we're going to play another one of your songs later on in the show, which is quite different from Groove Tactics. I want people to see the diversity of the kind of music you're doing. So this is Groove Tactics, okay? It's by Karla Leal. Everybody will enjoy this. Groove Tactics. Great track.
Oh,
Great
thank
track.
you.
Who does your arranging?
I do.
You do all the arranging?
Yes.
Do you do the scoring and charting too?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. You do it
Yeah.
all. Okay. Uh, You do the final mixing and mastering too?
No.
All right. We have we have somebody who's watching the show tonight, Jimmy John Keys, and he said, "Love the groove and groove tactics."
Oh, well, thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah. And here's somebody else that just read a comment. Kelly Fenice, love the orchestration.
Hey, Kelly, thank you. Keep on listening, girl.
Yep, you got people tuned in who are listening to your music tonight. So, yeah, tell me something. I'm curious. Um, when you started playing, did you start songwriting immediately, or did that come later?
That came later. Yeah.
So, so initially you just played bass in the church, and then you kind of did some pickups, playing bass with different bands, starting in Cali, then moving to
Exactly.
Texas. And when did you start your songwriting?
And when COVID happened, and then I discovered, oh, I could play keys, and then I just started putting everything together. So everything I've been hearing, while I was learning the bass and playing with different people, kind of just naturally gave me the ability to be able to play keys too, because I could just hear the sounds. And so, yeah, I mean, it happened during COVID. As soon as it started, I wrote my first song probably in June 2020.
So I'm assuming you can read music.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, you self-taught.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's not a simple thing to do. And
Oh, no. Slow.
and I guess tell me about when you do the arranging and the orchestration. When you decide whether you want a trumpet or a guitar, or you want keyboards. How do you go about moving? In other words, do you write the lyrics out first and then create the music, or do you have a tune in your head that you create, and then how do you decide on the orchestration?
Sometimes I'll hear the bass line first. So it's like putting pieces of a puzzle together. I might hear a sick groove, and I'll lay that groove down first, and then I'll put the drums to it, or put like a loop to it. Or sometimes I might hear the groove in the drums first. I'd be like, oh man, this is a killer groove. And all of a sudden I might hear the chords to start forming around it. And then I'll start, oh, okay, let me put this bass line to it. And then I'll start hearing the horns, and then this, and then it just kind of just escalates to step by step. So usually most of the time I'll either start with a drum track, or I'll start with a bass line first. Rarely do I start off with chords first for some reason. I don't know why.
And you don't start off with lyrics. So it's always the instrument.
No, sometimes, most of the time, the groove hits me first before I might hear the melody.
Okay, so you create the instrumentation, the arranging, and you lay it down in the studio and you record it. Then you go into post-production.
Basically. And then what's crazy, like when I first started, it was like, okay, start with the lyrics first. And I think a lot of time as I've grown now, it's kind of switched to where I might hear the melody first now, and then I'm forming everything around the melody. And I think that was kind of a growth thing, because I didn't really understand that concept. But it all came together in the end. So,
well, when you're in post-production, how do you know when it's over?
When, I don't know, it's something like I have a song I'm writing right now. So I'll be like, oh, okay, does it feels like there's horns that's needed? And usually like the horns is the last thing I'm writing in there. And I'll know if it's done, whether or not I can hear horns or not, because that's the last thing I write is the horn lines.
So you have a structure that you usually go by for almost every song that you create?
Most of the time. So I might wake up and, like I said, I might hear the groove first. So like last week I produced this new song, and what I heard first was the melody first. And so I played the melody. I'll either play it on the keyboard first, or I'll play it on the bass first. And so in this particular instance, this new song that's going to be on a new album, I play the melody first on the keyboard, and then I'll go back over it with the bass as a lead instrument, and then lay down the rhythm on it.
How do you decide on the tempo?
So for this album, a lot of the songs that I played in the beginning were super fast. They're like 115, 120 BPMs per second, and then per minute. And then, and so now I was like, okay, I need some more medium songs. So I'll start slowing it down to either like the 90 range, and then maybe a couple slow ones like 80-ish, or I might pick a tempo like 6/8 or 3/6 or 3/4 tempo,
Well, when you're in post production and you going through a lot of it, do you ever sit there and say, "Don, this needs a horn," or this? So what do you do then? Do you add it in, or do you just say next time, or what do you do?
I'll add it in. So a lot of the times, like the songs that you just heard, I did the horn lines, except for like Wait and See on the Vamp. I had somebody else do those horn lines. But sometimes I might not hear those horns because I'm not a natural horn player, right? And so I'm like, oh, I'm stuck on the horn lines. I hear this and this and this, but I need more. So I might send it out for somebody else to put the horn lines in for me.
Do you ever think, well, I need a xylophone in this one, or I need a flute? Do you ever think
yes. Oh my gosh. So I have been on Kim Scott for like her and Lizzo, like they're flutists. And I was like, man, that's so different. But really Kim Scott. And so I was writing a song. I was like, I hear flute all over this. So then I'll put the flute in through the keyboard. I'll pick like a flute sound on the keyboard. And you'll hear that in the new songs that I'm producing. Like you'll hear some xylophone. You will hear some flute.
That's why, I figured.
Singing together with the lead bass. And this sounds great. It's going to be a great album.
Kim Scott's going to be on the show too. I don't know if you know, there's a wonderful flautist who does jazz who I love, Reagan Whiteside.
Uh-huh.
Do you know Reagan at all? Do you know her music?
I don't know Reagan.
She's out of Atlanta. She has her own radio show in Atlanta also. And she is a marvelous flute player and does some phenomenal music. So after the show's over, we'll talk a little bit. I'll introduce you to some people that it's a community. I think you'll enjoy each other. So we'll do that too. So I want to play one more of your songs for everybody tonight.
Great.
I want to play "Hot Summer Breeze," and that was featuring Najee. Why don't you tell everybody about how you got Najee to play on your?
Well, so I was like, I'm a new artist, and I was like, I probably should feature an artist to kind of just get more exposure. And so I was talking to my promoter about it, and he happened to know Najee. He was like, hey, I'll connect you. And so me and Najee talked on the phone, and he liked the music that I was producing. And we were like, okay. He was like, I would love to play on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I used to listen to you growing up. So that's how it came about.
That's terrific. And Hot Summer Breeze, how did that tune come about?
Kind of the same. That was produced back in 2020, towards the end of 2020. And it's the same thing. I might wake up in the morning and I might hear a groove, and that was it. But this particular song, actually, I heard saxophone first. And so I started playing the saxophone on it in the beginning, and it kind of evolved. Like the format that it's in now, or how it's played now, is not how I produced it. Back in 2020. And so it just kind of evolved. And then when Najee came in the picture, it just started layer after layer, kind of just changing, and it just came into that.
All right.
A lot of post-production on this one.
Yeah, it's so funny. Some people, the artists do things differently. I know that Bruce Springsteen is known to take one song in post-production, takes 1 year for him to let go of it. And other artists, knock it out in a day. And it doesn't mean the quality is any lesser or greater. It's just totally different styles and dynamics, that they're looking for. So there's no formula. That's why I like to introduce each artist to the fans and to our listeners, because every artist works differently. I mean, the other thing is too, a lot of people who listen to music think, well, all you do is just walk into a studio and play. They don't understand that, the creative side, how long it takes if you're composing, if you're arranging, if then you're doing the orchestration, and then you do post production. It's an arduous process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money in a lot of cases
Oh
too.
yeah, I mean it takes a lot of dedication and investment in it. And so, I have spent a lot of money on it. I spent a lot of time on it. And you'd be like, well, why do you do it? And I think it's really just the heart of it. I think that, I wouldn't have the gift if it wasn't for my pastor telling me that I had the gift to do it. And so I'm producing this music with purpose. Like I feel like I do have something to offer and to bring to the table, something new. And I just want to bring like joy to people's hearts when they hear it, that it moves them. Maybe they're sad one day and they hear my music and they're like, oh, I feel better.
That's right. That's what it's supposed to do. So let's play Hot Summer Breeze, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. So this is Hot Summer Breeze. It's it's by Karla Leal, and it's featuring Najee. Wonderful. Love it. Love it. Here, Richard Donaldson made a comment. love all of your grooves, but this one is my favorite. And of course, who doesn't love Najee?
Hey, Richard.
Yeah, so you have a number of people listening in tonight, really enjoying your music.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Look, this has been really wonderful. I'm so glad you're able to spend some time with us tonight and take time to be on the show. Where do you see your music going in the next 5 years? How do you see it evolving?
Well, I mean, I hope to one day become as big as Dave Koz. That would be awesome, just to be able to do what I love full time. Right now, I'm in between. I do half of the engineering, half of the music, and I kind of balance it. But one day, it would be a great dream to be able to do it full time.
Yeah. Let me give you a hint about something. What you did with Najee, having featuring names on your music, that's the way to get noticed. Really noticed fast. The more you do that, because it works. You piggyback on other people, and people get to hear you and get to know your music that way. And it's a great way to promote your music. That's one thing. The other thing is get out in front of fans, especially music festivals. And once you drop the rest of your music coming out now, you'll have a body of music that you can send to festivals. And this is interesting too. I just want to make a comment about this. EPKs, electronic, putting together your an electronic press kit is an art now, and it's really important. If let's the House of Blues in New Orleans, I know that they get 500 EPKs a week.
Wow.
Yeah, and for what, 20 spots? The most, maybe 15 spots. So they only listen. The people who make the decisions about the music, who they're going to have, they only listen for 15 to 20 seconds to an EPK. Mm-hmm. So it's become now. You need to have all the pieces in place so that you can get into festivals, and you need to have connections to people. And this is part of putting together a team. You're an indie artist. You're doing this part-time like a lot of indie artists do, and it's really important to have a really good team. Yes. You don't have the time, and there's multiple pieces now in the evolving music scene. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad having you on, because you're still a rookie. But you have so much to offer, Karla, and your music is really terrific.
Thank you.
So look, it's been a real pleasure having you on it. Is there anything you want to tell your fans or listeners that they should take away from the show about your music?
I mean, this is a great show, and I appreciate you guys tuning in and just tuning into me and my music. So I appreciate you guys so much, and more music to come.
Yeah. And where can they find your music now if they wanted to buy it?
Yeah, they're iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. You can find it on every platform. I have a social media page, Karla Leal Music, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Same, Karla Leal Music.
Do you have a website too?
I do. KarlaLealMusic.com.
Okay, terrific. So everybody, go to Karla Leal and go to her website or social media or iTunes or Amazon. And you can get a lot of Karla's music. And Karla, I want to thank you again so much for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure. And, after your music drops and you're working on more music, we'll have you back on again.
Absolutely. Yay.
Next week, let me tell everybody about next week's guest. Next week, we have another great artist, JC Soul. She'll be on next week. And I think you're going to really, love the music that JC puts out. So tune in next week, come back, and we'll have another edition of the Power Hour. So thank you again, Karla. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. I'm Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.